welcome to my 9th video, getting close to 10. Thank you for joining me. My name is Adrina. I'm an Australian teacher, a Teachers Pay Teachers seller, and a mum. So things get pretty crazy around these parts. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 Procreate tips for newbies when creating clip art. So Procreate is such an amazing program and it has so many different things that you can do on it, but it does take time to learn. So I'm just going to be sharing with you guys my top 5 tips if you're wanting to create clip art for your TPT store or for somewhere else. These are just some tips that I have for those brand new sellers or brand new people starting out on Procreate. So I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's just jump straight into it. Let's go. Okay guys, let's open up Procreate. And I'm going to start with a 3000 by 3000 300 dpi canvas. Now my first tip for creating clip art for newbies is when you are creating your sketch or your outline is to use the reference feature. If you've never heard of the reference feature, basically the reference feature allows you to fill in colors based off that sketch without actually having to touch the sketch layer, okay, or the outline layer. So it took me a little while to understand this, and when you're dealing with Procreate, it is a little bit of a learning curve. So it does take time to learn things, but over time you'll get better and better. But if you're brand new, it is important to know that reference feature because it really helps you when you're wanting to create clip art that's black and white and clip art that's color as well, of the same image. So let me just show you how you can use reference and what it basically does. Okay, so I'm just going to start with a black monoline brush line, and it's going to be at 31. And let's just say we're going to draw an apple. So I'm going to draw an apple here. Okay, nothing fancy, but just for this video, we've drawn a bit of a wonky apple, all good. Okay, so with reference, basically, it allows me to color this whole image in with whatever colors I want to without touching this outline. And I'm going to show you how I do this. This is something that I do use pretty much in majority of all my images, especially if I'm creating clip art that's going from color and black and white. So let me just show you what I mean by this. So if I took that background layer off, I'm just left with my black outline of my apple. Okay, so what I want to do is I just want to create another layer, and I want to make sure that the layer is below the apple. I'm just going to rename this to apple so you can see it a bit better. So apple outline. Okay. So we've got our apple outline, we've got our layer 2. So reference is a really great feature because I'm going to show you how it works. But first I'm going to show you how to put it onto reference. If I just click on the name there, you have a selection of options here. And down the end, down the bottom here, you see reference. See that? You'll see reference. So if you just click reference, and what that will do, that will put reference on to this layer. So in this case, our layers are apple layer. So you won't notice anything happen from doing that, but what you will see is it say reference. So from reference, what this allows us to do then is go into another layer, making sure that it's underneath. If it's above the reference layer, it's not going to work. But what it allows us to do is it allows us to color this apple in without being on the same layer as the outline. So let's just choose a color, let's say a red apple. Color that in red. Let's do, I could even have it on the same layer as this if I wanted it, or I could do a separate one. I'll just do a separate one just for this video. But I'll choose the stem color, little brown one. And what that allows us now to do, so you can see I've got 3 different sections. I've got the colour of my apple, I've got my stem, and then I've got my reference. So I could take away my outline and I'd be left with just, zoom up so you can see, be left with the apple coloured in without the outline on it. If I put the outline back on, you can see that it all looks like that, and it looks like that. I can take that away, and that's what the clip art would look like. Now, what's good about this is basically, for example, if I wanted to create this now to a green apple, I could just duplicate this or just create a new layer again. So let's just create a new layer, making sure that layer is underneath the reference. I could turn the visibility off of that red apple, and I could change it to a green apple. And I could turn that off, and then what I could do, this is important because you can then make a white apple. You won't see that because the background color is turned on. If I took the background color off, you'll see. So, and you could obviously change the stem to make that. So let's just duplicate that, turn that invisibility off, and then you can see I've got a black and white apple, and that is perfect for black and white clip art that people really love on Teachers Pay Teachers. So yeah, this reference tool or feature basically really allows you to do a lot of colouring in without having to touch this outline, which is really amazing, because sometimes if you do just colour drop this, I'm just going to delete these. I'm going to delete that. But sometimes if you were to colour it in, for example, and then you wanted to colour in another colour, the more times that you do that, sometimes it's hard for you to change it and be a bit more versatile with it. Because what I mean by that is basically, say if I want to add texture to this, say if I want to add some like texture, let's just say some texture, some dots to it, for example. So it will go over the black line, or it'd be like you'd be trying to like get so close into this without touching the black line, but then when you try to erase it, you'll be raising the whole thing out, and you don't want that. You don't want to be doing it that way, because that is a lot harder doing it that way. So that's why reference is so important, and it's actually such a good feature, and it was one that took me a little while to work out. Another good thing about reference, I'll just quickly show you as well, is like I said, if you want to add texture to that, so reference is on my outline here, and let's just say I wanted the green apple again. If I wanted to add texture to this green apple, just give it the stem a colour as well. So if I want to add texture to this apple here, what I could do then is I could actually put that into alpha lock. And what that will do then is that will allow me to, say if I wanted those dots again, let's do a dark greeny blue. I wanted those dots as the texture. What that would allow me to do is to colour that in without touching the black line. And that is something that's so handy if you're creating clip art, because then you don't have to redraw it or draw it from scratch, okay? So all I know is reference is a feature that I love, and it's something that I use all the time when creating clip art. So that's my number 1 tip. Let's go on to number 2. Okay, so tip number 2 is lines and shapes. So if you are wanting, let's just go back into calligraphy, monoline, let's go to black. If you're wanting to create like perfectly circle shapes, or perfect shapes, for example, or as close to perfect as you can, then let me just show you. So normally you just be like, okay, I'm going to try and draw a circle, and you're like, oh no, that's not really very circular. So what you can do to make it so much easier on your part for drawing a circle is, if you draw a circle to the best of your ability, just hold it and then also put one finger down on this. This will make it pretty much the best circle that it can be, and it'll be like even on most sides. And what you can further do from that, if you can see up here, I'll have to move this for a sec. you can see here, it says edit shape. So it says edit shape here. So if you could click on edit shape, you can see what other options there are, but you can also move things around by dragging them and moving it around like that from these little blue circles, which I find really helpful if you're trying to create like circles for a particular thing. And this does work with other shapes like triangles and things like that. So I'll show you again. Let's just get rid of that circle. Let's just clear that. So say if I wanted to do a triangle, I would draw a triangle to the best of my ability. I would do that, and then I'd put one finger down to make it look pretty much like an exact triangle. If I wanted to edit that, then I could just click edit shape, and then I could do triangle, and it will just obviously allow me to move it to however I wanted it. And it's got these little blue circles that kind of help you basically give you a little guide to how to resize and reshape it. So that's my second tip. This is one that I use from time to time, and it's really helpful to know that that's something that you can do with this. And I'll just say too, it does apply the same thing to lines. So if I was to draw a line, to make it straight, just hold it down and then one finger, and then it will actually allow you to move it in like increments to make it like a straight line. Okay, dokie, and you can do edit shape. And I've got to go get my son. Okay, if you hear my son in the background, I do apologise. He just woke up for his nap, but I need to film this video. So, okay, so for tip 3, it's a very simple tip, super easy to do. And I just thought I'd include this because it's something that is great for when you're working with black and white drawings, for example. But yeah, I'm just going to call it previous colour. So let's just, for example, draw a heart. Okay, so that's my heart. And say I wanted to colour fill it in black, and then I wanted to do some white spots. Now the colour that I used prior to this was actually white. So instead of going into clicking here and then trying to find the white, I know that the colour I used previously was white. So if I just click that, hold it down, see how it turned to white there? And so I could start drawing with white instead of having to spend my time trying to find it in the colour palette. Okay, so same thing if I wanted to go back to black, I just hold that down and here I am at black again. It just makes your work process a little bit quicker. And yeah, so I just find this is a cute little tip that's easy to do, and it's just helpful if you're wanting to just go between two different colours. Alrighty, so that is that previous colour. Let's delete that. Okay, so my fourth tip is colour palette. I love different types of colour palettes and I have so many on my iPad, but I do need to organise them. But my tip here is basically if you're wanting a consistent range of colours that you're using, is to create your own colour palette so you can refer to it so simple and easy. So let's just say, for example, I wanted to make a Halloween colour palette. Let's click up here. I'm going to show you how I could do that. So let's just say I wanted to work with 4 different colours, but I wanted them to be easy to access and I didn't have to scroll down to find all the colours that I wanted out of my colour palette all the time, or go to the disc and find them each time. So what I could do is go to, like I just had before, go to palettes here, and I want to click on the plus, and it says create new palette. So I want to create new palette. So this will just give me an untitled palette. You can rename it, like in this case, let's just do Halloween.
Halloween. Oh, let's try renaming that again. So Halloween.
So that's our Halloween palette. And now to make a Halloween palette, I'm just going to find the colours that I want. And I actually have I've already made a Halloween palette here prior, but let's just say I only want to work with 4 different colours. So to basically create your colour palette, you're just going to click on a colour that you want. So for example, I want mine to just be dark, some dark colors. So 4 different colors. I've chosen the color and it's up in my color palette here, and I'm just going to press on one of the boxes and you can see that the purple's rocked up there. Okay, so say I want a dark green for my next color. I just press it there, and as you can see I've got it selected here. So I want 2 more colors. Let's say I wanted a dark red. Put that there. And then my last color I wanted to be, let's say, just an orange. Okay, and so there's my 4 different colors, Halloween colors that I wanted to use. Now, one of my tips here is, okay, so that's my Halloween palette. But when I want to use it so it's easy to access, I can just press default, and it's actually selected as default already, which is good, because if I go to this, and this will be here as my default here, so I can just choose and go in between those colors without having to try and select them every single time. That is my 4th tip. Alright, so my last tip for creating clip art is basically when you're exporting your clip art is to use the snapping tool. This is one tip that it took me a little while to learn, but once I learned it I was like, okay, that makes so much sense, and it's just handy for the people that are using the clip art because there's not extra stuff hanging around the clip art piece. So I'm going to show, so let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm just going to draw a very basic clip art piece. Let's do a star, for example. Let's choose a different color. Let's go like orange. So I'm going to draw a star, for example. So let's draw a little star. Okay, it doesn't have to be a fancy star, guys. That was super messy, but here we got a star, okay? Now, what I want to do, see how there's all this white space? If I was to just like export that as is, but if I was to take away the background, I would still have all this space in the background. So if I just exported that, if I exported it as a PNG or a JPEG, you'd have this big amount of space around here, and I'll show you 2 different examples of what they'd look like. Okay guys, just so you can get an idea of what I mean by the space around it, here we have the clip art star that has been snapped or cropped using the snapping tool, and you can see that in the grey box around it there's not a lot of extra space. Whereas when I click on the star here that I've exported without using the snapping tool, you can see as I move it around, there's heaps of white space here, which makes it a bit annoying for the buyer to try and place things onto a piece of paper and add other extra clip art on top. So that's why the snapping tool is important to use, because then you're not trying to enlarge things and you've got all this extra space, especially if you're using other bits of clip art. That's one of the reasons why that snapping tool is one of my top tips. Okay, so hopefully I was able to show you the difference between those 2. But for snapping, this is my 5th tip for snapping. What you want to do is when you're exporting, so you want to go to Canvas, so you want to go to the wrench. You want to go to the wrench, then you want to go to Canvas, then you want to go crop and resize. And see how all this white space is here? You can manually do this, but one really handy and easy way is by clicking on setting, clicking on snapping, and what it does, it basically snaps it into the last pixel of the edge of that clip art piece. So it makes it so much easier. If I click done, then it gets rid of all that extra white space around it. So that's super helpful for when you're exporting your clip art to your clip art pack, so you don't have all that extra space around it. So if I just go back. So hopefully one of them might have been helpful to you. They're just my top 5 tips currently, and they might change it as I get better at Procreate myself. And that is my top 5 tips. I hope that this has helped. If you're brand new to Procreate or you're a brand new TPT seller looking to create clip art on Procreate, I hope that these little tips might have just helped you out a little bit more. So thank you so much. I just want to say a big thank you to all the new subscribers that I've had recently. I think we're up to 66 now, so that's amazing. And I just want to say before I go, if there is any particular questions about Procreate or Clipart in general, or just things you sort of want to know about, please feel free to comment down below, because I would love to hear like what you guys want to know or want to see from me, because I would love to create content that you guys need help with or that you want to know. So yeah, feel free to leave any questions below that I could possibly make a video on to help address those. And yeah, for now I'm just going to say thank you. I hope you have an amazing day and happy creating. Adios.